Hey everyone, Genome Gaming here, coming to you with the next Marvel Strike Force Beginners video. And today I wanted to kind of go over a subject I don't really see talked about very much, and I think it's pretty important for new players as it pertains to resource management. And that's going to be micro synergies, right? I'm not sure if there's a proper term for it, but basically there's synergies between several characters in this game that are better or worse than they appear. And today we're going to talk about some of the worst ones, okay? So basically all my hearted characters here have some sort of synergy together, in that if they're both on the same team, they do a little something extra, usually in the form of a little bit of extra damage. But I'm going to talk about this and why I don't think you should be going for these. I mean, if it happens naturally, they're both on the same team, like one of the pairs I have here, that's something else. But for the most part, it's not worth building teams around these two characters because of that small amount of synergy. Now, I do want to give a very, very small addendum to this, and that's Scientist Supreme. She's a very interesting character in that she has huge synergy with the AIM team, but it is often a good idea to put her onto a team even though she has no technical synergies with them, and it all has to do with her ultimate and her special, right? So here with her ultimate, you start throwing out huge amounts of debuffs, right, to everybody. So that includes your own team, if they're not AIM. And on the following turn, she will flip all those to positive effects. So basically, you'll get one turn of negative debuffs on your team, 2 turns of negative debuffs on the opponent's team, and with AIM, they don't really have to deal with the debuffs, right? But here's the thing, it seems debilitating, right, to especially high levels, throwing like 4 debuffs on yourself. But keep in mind, the opponent's team is getting that too, for the most part, right? So it's not as bad as it looks. Like, you have defense down, and they probably have offense down. So all that extra damage you think you might be taking, you probably won't. And she is incredibly useful in things like Dark Dimension 2. Once I got her to Gear Tier 13 and ran her through DD2, things were so much easier. So it's like a round of pain, almost a stall round, right? While you get this rolling until you get everything flipped with the special. But after that happens, then you start murdering them, right? So she is like the prime example in this one of a character that has extreme synergy with the team, but don't let that define her. She can be good on other teams. Now, with these other characters that I've hearted up here, it's not so much the case. And let's talk about maybe the biggest mistake that I made, right, beginning out, with Ant-Man and Wasp. Okay, 2 things. Ant-Man, while a bad character, he's leagues better than Wasp. At least he used to be. She just got reworked, so things are a little better for her, but I still think he's a better character than she is as a standalone unit. I used him a lot. I used him DD2 because I had him Gear Tier 13. It's a long story. It was bad. I'm trying to save you that pain, right? So, okay, where's the synergies? Well, he has tons of synergies with Wasp, right? Okay, so if Wasp is on the team with him, on spawn, he throws her an evade, right? Okay, that's pretty good. Forgive me if some of the stuff's newer. I haven't looked at the new kits that much. His AoE does more damage if Wasp is an ally, right? So it does 40% more damage. Sounds big, right? On his basic, when he steals an effect, if he actually doesn't wind up stealing it, he throws the same effect on Wasp too. So he's got 3 things going for him, right? That goes to her to make them better. Without him, though, she has nothing going, right? Nothing that she does actually helps. This is new text, so please don't get me wrong here. But in the previous thing, nothing that she does really affects Ant-Man that much, right? Other than beefing up his attack a little bit on his ultimate. So she needs him to be decent, or even still poor, but decent. And he doesn't really need her, except for a tiny bit of damage, right? But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the elephant in the room here. Ant-Man's damage is pitiful. Absolutely pitiful. And adding 40% onto attack that's basically hitting a character with a big pillow isn't going to do anything. And it's sure not worth including a really bad character like Wasp on the team. I fell into this trap, and I built them both up. She was Gear Tier 12. he was geared to your third turn. This was a little bit later on, but I used them for like the better part of a year on a tech team. I built a tech team up because I had vision. I locked him out of a mega orb, 100 orbs of it, so that was really good because you got the defense up with the other tech allies, and I used crossbones and I think Punisher or something like that. And I had a weird AoE team going on thing. But basically, I spent way too much time and resources on a Wasp because of this synergy that it sounds like it's really good, but then you start playing with more powerful characters with actual synergies, and you see how poor this really is. So usually the tiny damage upgrade is nothing. Maybe the only instance where there's a real measurable difference is with Groot and Rocket. They actually have a couple synergies going on. That's why they're not included here. But mostly on Rocket's ult, it does a substantial bit more of damage, and he does a lot of damage anyway with Groot around. So that's an example of a good one, and they will oftentimes be on the same team anyway. But these characters don't really bring anything else to the table. Now, there's been some changes with how Avengers work. So once again, this is a little bit older information, but some of it still somewhat pertains, right? So if you were to throw Cap and Iron Man on a team to get a wee bit of, I don't know what you'd call it now, just synergy. It's different because he's a Wave 1 Avenger now, so this is a little less relevant than it used to be. But just these two alone won't make a good team together because of Rocket Barrage and the way it interacts with Captain America being on your team. It does an extra 30% damage, right? It's not a big enough reason to throw Cap on your team if he doesn't gel. Now, a lot of people are using Wave 1 Avengers nowadays because they're really good because of Thor. Granted, Thor, and of course, if you have them high levels, Hawkeye and Black Widow can do some pretty decent things together, but most people don't have that, especially Black Widow. She's not that easy to get a hold of. So Thor is what makes that team work, right? And it sure isn't this extra 30% that Iron Man is giving Cap. Now, if you're going to put him on the team anyway, it's great. It's free damage, but don't fall into the trap of thinking that's worth building a team around, because that little bit of damage is certainly not. You barely can tell the difference, if at all, right? And maybe one of the most famous ones is with Scarlet Witch and Vision, right? Now, just like with Ant-Man and Wasp, there's not a whole lot going in the other direction from Vision to Scarlet Witch. Nothing that really does really has that much effect on her, if at all. And but Vision gets something, and it has to do with his ultimate solar beam, right? So it's an AoE. It usually clears 2 buffs at higher levels, and usually just does damage. When you got Wanda on the team, you also apply a bleed to each target. Bleeds are nice, but Vision's not a huge damage character anyway. This is really tiny. Really tiny. And once again, it's nice to have, but don't be throwing Scarlet Witch and Vision on the same team if you weren't already going to have them there because of this tiny little synergy. It's just not worth it at all. The amount of times this will win a game for you is pretty few, or they are pretty few, should I say. So it's interesting, and I think she had the Wave 1 Avenger tag now? I can't remember. Let's see. No, she doesn't have the Wave 1 Avenger tag, so just regular Avenger. So there's really very little reason to run these two together. I mean, yeah, you could run an Avenger team, but you want to run a Wave 1 Avenger team. That's the team that works. The regular Avengers suck. They suck bad. So, yeah, that's one of the more famous ones, I'd say, in this game. So, and once again, now I didn't build Scarlet Witch up too much, but I had her around 50k power. My Vision was around 60k power. But I very rarely put those two together, and it should have occurred to me that the synergy of Ant-Man and Wasp was very similar to these guys, even though there's a lot better synergies with Ant-Man and Wasp, by the way. But so it should have occurred to me to stop using Ant-Man and Wasp because the going for Scarlet Witch and Vision was so bad. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense to you. Once again, if you're a newer player, free-to-play player, you don't have a huge roster, you got to go with what you can get. And if these characters are somewhat well-leveled for you, great. Use them together and see if they work. Most of these people don't team up too well together. It's funny, these are all Avengers too, by the way. But don't fall into the trap of putting too many resources in these characters just because they have that little synergy together. Like, if you have Scarlet Witch, I don't recommend you just go hard for Vision just because you have Scarlet Witch and you want to put them together. It is not worth it. You'd be much better off with other characters who have better synergies, right? So, yeah, if that doesn't make sense, let me know in the comment below. But basically, this is beware of the hidden, not so much hidden synergy, but the over hyped synergies that you might get by reading these things. They're not that good. Just a little bit of a damage upgrade is usually not worth it. If it was like 300% damage upgrade, that's something to think about on AoEs, but 40% or whatever, maybe it comes to 50% later on with Ant-Man, and he doesn't do any damage with it. So you're talking like going from, a 6k AoE damage to everyone to going like 9k. That's not going to make a big difference. It really isn't. But anyway, yep, that's the video, and hopefully it is helpful for those and keeps them from making the same mistakes that I made coming up. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you care for videos like this, and I'll keep making them. And who knows what strange subjects I'll come up with next. So anyway, thanks again for watching. Until next time, this is Genome Gaming, out.